morning, everyone. Welcome to the Barrie Police Service Board meeting of May the 23rd, 2024. For those that may have been expecting to watch us live on YouTube, we're having some technical difficulties this morning. The meeting will be recorded and will be posted immediately upon conclusion. And perhaps we may be able to go live during the meeting, but immediately after, it will be available for view. Like in keeping, like to begin with our land acknowledgement. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it is customary to acknowledge the traditional territories and ancestral lands of our Indigenous peoples. We would like to acknowledge that this sacred land on which the Barrie Simcoe Emergency Service Campus operates, it has been the site for human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the ancestral land of the Wendat and the Anishinaabe Nation. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaty. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Miigwech, thank you. Our agenda was distributed in advance. A motion to approve the agenda for today, May 23rd, 2024. Strong, seconded, Mr. Khan. Any questions, comments, amendments with respect to today's agenda? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. Does any member of the board have a conflict of interest they'd like to declare with respect to today's agenda? Seeing none. There were two sets of minutes distributed in advance. A motion to approve our April 18th public board minute. Deputy Mayor Thompson, Mr. Khan, any questions, amendments, or adjustments to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Motion to approve our minutes of May 13th, 2024 of the budget subcommittee meeting. And just for members, that's not approval of the recommendations, it is approval of the minutes themselves. Mr. Khan, seconder. Deputy Mayor Thompson, any questions, comments? The entire minutes are referred to later on in the meeting. Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. Between our last two meetings, we had to do an electronic motion just for timing with respect to the appointment of special constables, which is a requirement of the board. We did that by way of email approval, but and just for the public, there was a motion from Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Mr. Khan, that the Barrie Police Service Board officially approves the appointment of 13 new special constable members for Barrie Police Service pursuant to the provisions of Section 92 of the Community Safety and Policing Act and the Ontario Reg 396-23. There were a number of items in our consent agenda that were distributed in advance. Directions to the chief, auxiliary and special constable appointment and terminations, human resource report, public complaints annual report, and the use of force annual report. Are there any of the consent agenda items a member would like to hold? Motion to receive the consent agenda items. Mayor Nuttall, Mr. Khan, all those in favor? Thank you. Chief, I'll hand it over to you through Mr. Turner, through the auditor, to present the year-end audited financial statements for the service.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'll have them come up. They're going to actually take our seats here and present it to you. So, hi.
Great. Good morning. This morning with Lillian Chung, who is a partner audit group specializing audits municipalities, hospitals, public sector. Lillian is the audit partner for the city of Barrie and all of its related entities, including the Barrie Police Services Board. Aside from the client service, Lillian also represents Deloitte the public sector large firm discussion group, serves as a quality risk leader for Deloitte Ontario Audit Practice. Lillian joined us last week at the budget subcommittee to kind of do an in-depth review of the financial statements. We wanted to be here in person today just to kind of give an overview of the audit process and year-end results. So with that, I'll pass it over to Lillian.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ty, and thank you to the board for having me here today.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. First time being here, so very nice to meet everyone. I'm very pleased to be here to present the results of our audit, which has also been included in the board package today. You'll see an in-depth copy of our audit results report, which will outline both our audit strategy, our audit risks that were assessed, as well as the results of our work. Our audit is conducted in line with Canadian auditing standards, which is a set of standards that all auditors follow as part of the conduct of a financial statements audit. Our audit is focused on determining whether or not the financial statements of the Police Services Board is materially misstated. So it is not an absolute audit. It is a very sample-driven audit, and we conduct and achieve our objective through a combination of testing a sample of transactions, as well as testing the internal controls that have been adopted by management of the Police Services Board. I'm very pleased to report that, as you would have seen, as a result of our audit procedures that were done, which is risk-based, we have concluded that there are no material misstatements to the financial statements, nor are there any internal control deficiencies. Both of these are really the best outcome that you could see from the purpose of an audit. And so we're very pleased to report that to you and really to extend our thanks to management for their cooperation throughout the audit process. Happy to take any questions that you may have for me, but the details of our audit results are outlined.
Just to say, at the budget subcommittee, we did go through a detailed overview of the audited statements that was led by Ty and Lillian. We were able to ask questions there. I would say that the subcommittee was also impressed with the cleanliness of the audit and the work that our finance team put into preparing and working with our auditors. So we felt that it was a good result, and we're prepared to bring forward a recommendation to accept the audited financial statements today.
Thanks, Mr. Honor. Yeah, if I can just echo that as a 40-year professional auditor, having what I refer to as a clean audit report, where not only were there no material adjustments to our statements that were presented to the auditor for management, but the auditor's report to the board through the subcommittee identified no weaknesses or internal control issues, et cetera. So I want to convey the appreciation to Mr. Turner and his team for a job well done. As I said, it was the recommendation of the subcommittee that the board approve the financial statements. I will entertain a motion to approve the year-end audit of financial statements. Is there any questions now for the auditor or Ty with respect, excuse me, Mr. Turner, with respect to the audited statements that we all had a chance to review in advance? Please.
Yeah, thanks, Board Chair. Actually, I'm going to ask you to help me out with the timing of when this item was brought forward for consideration. It's not to do with the audit itself, but with material that was raised during the review. I recognize that some new math and new formulas are being brought forward regarding WSIB exposure and things like that. And I just wanted to follow up on that point, not a question of the audit, but our strategy going forward.
Yes, there was lengthy discussion at the subcommittee on that. I think Mr. Turner would probably be best to, obviously there was a change, picked up approximately a $17 million accrual for WSIB. Mr. Turner, speak to that, please.
Definitely. So WSIB is something I think has been on our radar for a while. We've brought some of that information back to the board, but what you're seeing on the financial statements this year, I think, is probably a better reflection that WSIB liability carries. We're working with a new actuary, and we have a much more robust calculation and methodology that recognizes the true likelihood of some of our members returning to work and the costs associated with that loss of earnings. So capturing that this year is resulting in a fairly significant increase in the WSIB liability. But we've had several conversations to review that methodology with the actuary, and we believe that it is a more accurate reflection of what that liability carries. And we will keep that in mind as we go forward to make sure that we can plan for that liability in the future.
Thanks. So I absolutely appreciate that we're using better data and therefore gathering better understanding. So is it part of then budget preparedness for 2025 where this becomes opportunity for conversation in terms of building a long-term strategy? That's really what I'm looking for.
I think I can answer in the budget that we presented to council, it's approved by council, as the anticipated costs of WSIP for fiscal 2024. The accrual is the anticipated cost to perpetuity that so and I think it's important to note for those that may be watching the accrual wasn't a $17 million hit in fiscal 2023. It was what the anticipated cost to the end of the WSIP program. So in our budget, we budget for our budgeted or expected actual disbursements for WSIP in the fiscal year, whereas the accrual is the anticipated total costs based on their estimates of what it would cost to the end for the WSIP.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions of the auditor or Mr. Turner with respect to the statements? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Back to you again, Mr. Turner, to discuss the surplus reported in the audited statements.
So our next recommended motion speaks to our year-end surplus for 2023. We have previously discussed an overview of how we got to that $2.1 million surplus, which I can speak to again if needed. But the motion specifically relates to how that surplus would be allocated. So we have 6 motions that will speak to where those funds will go to. Which include an amount toward capital reserve, have some specific identified capital needs that would help address those and keep those out of future budgets and funding required for that. We have an amount going to our 2024 operating budget for a couple items specifically related to the new Community Safety and Policing Act. We have a recommended motion to transfer $300,000 to our WSIB reserve, recognizing that that reserve is currently in a deficit and there's increased pressure on that reserve. We also have a motion to transfer $100,000 to the Community Safety Reserve, which the chief is going to speak to the plan for that. And then beyond that, the remaining surplus, we recommended splitting that allocation on a 75%, 25% basis, where we would maintain 75% in our operating reserve, knowing that we have a lot of pressure coming from the new Community Safety Policing Act and just as a provision for their unanticipated events. And then 25% of that remaining surplus would be allocated back to City of Barrie. I can speak to any questions that relate to those motions.
I have one that I think would be helpful to the board at a very high level. We, again, at the subcommittee, we dealt with it in much more detail, but what are the 4 or 5 items that for the most part drove surplus? If you comment for the board for that, or please, Mr. Turner.
Absolutely. So the main driving force that contributed to that $2.1 million surplus is related to grant funding. Typically, grant funding is funding received and money spent on that program or initiative. But specifically for 2023, we had a couple grants that did contribute to our surplus. The first being the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Grant. The funding that we received provincially ended up being 550,000 above what we were expecting. We also, through the NG 911 grant, were able to recover $200,000 of prior year costs and $400,000 of the current year costs related to salaries, licensing, maintenance, other costs that were already expected. Beyond that, we do have a surplus in our general revenues. We've been able to take advantage of interest rates. We have increased revenue from paid duties and other user fees that resulted in about $500,000 surplus in 2023. And then beyond that, we have kind of offsetting impacts in 2023. So our salaries were actually in a deficit, but our operating expenses, we were in a surplus and related to things like fuel, insurance, and other operating supplies.
Thank you, sir. With that information, I'll open up to the board for questions. Seeing none, there's a motion to approve the following transfers. $295,732 be returned to the city of Barrie. $473,250 be allocated to services capital reserve. $52,000 be allocated to the operating budget. $300,000 be allocated to the WSIB reserve. $100,000 be allocated to the community safety and well-being reserve, and $887 be allocated to the services operating reserve. Mr. Khan, second. Mr. Khan. I'll ask again, any questions with respect to the allocations? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. Lillian, I know you made a long drive up from Toronto. We've got several minutes, hours of work. If you'd like to head your way back to Toronto, you're welcome to. And again, on behalf of the board, thank you and your team for a timely and efficient audit, and we do appreciate your results. So thank you very much again. Yeah, take care. Chief, I'll hand it over to you next, please, to introduce Ms. Sharman, who's no stranger to where she is. I thought she wasn't here. I was going to say that's a problem, Chief.
Actually, board chair, just if we could, yeah, I think there's a switch in the rotation there.
So with approval from the board to adjust 15 and 16 in the agenda, is everybody in favor of that adjustment? Seeing that, Chief, then please, we'll move 16 to 15 and 15 to 16 in the downtown initiative. Chief.
Thank you, board chair. Yes, you were stuck with hearing from me first before Ms. Sharman speaks. So I'm pleased to start today's presentation by sharing key insights from our 2023 Community Safety Survey. These findings aren't just numbers, they're benchmarks guiding our efforts to serve and protect our community better. The survey reflects our commitment to transparency, giving voice to our residents on the Barrie Police Service's performance. Exploring these results, we better understand our community's concerns, our strengths, challenges, and areas for growth. This insight helps us stay aligned with evolving needs and expectations of our growing city. We want to capture data that can be used to inform evidence-based decision-making now and into the future. Ultimately, this leads to more effective and targeted strategies that address the needs of our community in a meaningful way. In this presentation, I'll focus on aspects of the survey that pertain specifically to the downtown area. However, I invite those interested in the full results to visit our website and access the comprehensive report. 48% of respondents to the 2023 Barrie Community Safety Survey said they felt unsafe in the downtown Barrie during the day. The 2023 Community Safety Survey asked respondents to choose their top 5 safety concerns in downtown Barrie, and the following were the primary areas of focus: substance abuse, disorderly conduct, panhandling, physical assault, and gang activity, with substance abuse being clearly the most prominent of concerns. 39% of respondents to the 2023 Community Safety Survey said that they believe increased officer patrol, presence, and enforcement would help improve safety in the downtown Barrie. While the survey didn't specifically identify the boundaries of downtown Barrie, we believe it's important to recognize the significant inclusion of additional spaces beyond the traditional urban core. For this strategy, we will focus on an area that encompasses our waterfront trails, beaches, and surrounding parks. By acknowledging this broader scope, we can better appreciate the diverse range of activities and experiences that define our downtown area. As the temperature rises and the summer season unfolds, our downtown area comes alive with a myriad of community-driven programs, festivals, and events. These activities draw both residents of our area and visitors to our downtown and waterfront. However, with increased foot traffic and participation in events, there's a natural expectation for increased call volume. The measurements provided include a year-round reactive CAD calls, computer-aided dispatch created calls, meaning that these calls for service reported by the community to the Barrie Police Service. It's evident from the graph that and display chart that during peak summer months, we receive hundreds of additional calls for service to the downtown area. These measurements are significant as they reflect instances of harm reported directly by members of our community. This distinction is important because it guides our allocation of resources, ensuring that we prioritize areas and situations where harm is most prevalent. It's important to note that despite downtown currently having relatively high levels of harm, it remains a very safe area. I want to make sure that is clear. By focusing on preventing harm, we aim to enhance the safety and well-being of our community members. Our city is safe. We just have an elevated harm in the downtown, but that's relative to a very safe city, so it has to be taken in context. Leveraging our data, what we know, has guided us in developing a strategy that effectively addresses the need for action. Our downtown visibility strategy directly responds to the expressed needs and desires of the community, identified through extensive dialogue and engagement. There's a clear collective request for increased police presence, enhanced safety measures, and greater sense of security in these vital areas of our community. At its core, this initiative is driven by the fundamental principle that everyone deserves to feel safe and secure in their surroundings. By increasing police presence and visibility, we aim to create an environment where individuals can freely and confidently engage in daily activities, frequent local businesses, and enjoy the various amenities that the downtown area and its surroundings have to offer. Achieving increased visibility in the downtown and surrounding area will be a multifaceted effort, leveraging various resources and personnel to ensure a robust and comprehensive approach. The primary strategy to enhance visibility will involve supplementing the community safety and well-being engagement team, along with the downtown BIA liaison officers, by adding sworn members of the Barrie Police Service who will be equipped with high visibility uniforms. In addition to the supplementary sworn members, the initiative will also involve the addition of special constables, auxiliary officers, and citizens on patrol members. These personnel will enhance the efforts of our sworn officers, contributing to the community safety through proactive engagement and support roles. During the months of May and June, operational hours will be extended throughout the day, from Monday to Saturday, to accommodate peak periods of activity, thus enhancing community policing efforts during these times. As the demand for heightened police presence increases during peak summer months due to community events in the downtown, parks, and surrounding areas, staffing coverage may necessitate full 7-day coverage. As a reminder, our frontline and support units remain available for 24/7 response as usual if something does happen anywhere in the city. Assigned to foot and bicycle patrols, these officers will provide highly visible and reassuring presence to our community members. Furthermore, this initiative will utilize the presence of fleet vehicles in controlled areas to enhance police visibility. These vehicles, equipped with high visibility markings and lighting, will be strategically deployed to areas where vehicular traffic access is necessary or beneficial for effective policing. By incorporating fleet vehicles into the visibility strategy, such as our side-by-side UTV, our service can extend its reach and presence in areas that may not be easily accessible on foot or by bicycle. To address open drug use in the downtown area and parks, the direction to the officers involved in this initiative is to seize illegal drugs and paraphernalia and send them for destruction. Our officers are keenly aware of the health crisis faced in our city with all the challenges that addiction and mental health issues bring. This approach is commonly referred to as seize it, support them strategy, emphasizing proactive intervention to address openly risky drug use in our public areas. Additionally, BPS downtown teams will provide vulnerable individuals with information for outreach and community partners that offer support for mental health and addiction services, facilitating pathways to recovery and assistance. The goal of this initiative is to create a safe and welcoming environment that is conducive to the social, economic, and cultural vibrancy of the downtown, parks, and surrounding areas. We recognize that effectively addressing the mental health and addiction needs with our community extends far beyond the scope of policing. It necessitates a collaborative, multi-sectoral approach to ensure that we can comprehensively serve those in need. By working with stakeholders and continuously assessing and adapting our approach, we are committed to realizing this vision and ensuring that our community remains a thriving and inclusive place for all. As part of our comprehensive communication strategy, our corporate communications unit will work closely with officers and special constables stationed in the downtown area. This teamwork will involve sharing of photos and videos on various social media platforms to showcase our active presence, engagement efforts, and the array of activities taking place in the downtown. We will monitor our progress by comparing qualitative data from the 2023 Community Safety Survey with the results of the 2024 Community Safety Survey, which we'll gather later this year. This will further involve the analysis of quantitative metrics, including crime volume and crime harm statistics. By keeping a close eye on our data, we can assess the effectiveness of our downtown strategy. This data-driven approach allows us to make informed decisions, refine our strategies as needed, and ensure that our efforts are yielding tangible results in promoting community safety and well-being. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chief Johnson. Questions for the chief? Strong.
Thank you for your presentation, Chief. And I think it's certainly timely and will be increased visibility, I believe will be well received from our residents. You noted the focus on downtown waterfront trails and parks as well. And I'm just wondering, particularly for the months of like the rest of May and June, there are a few downtown schools also that have different, like reported different perceptions of harm in those locations. And so I'm wondering if some effort can be made to patrol those downtown school areas as well. Like I'm thinking of Hillcrest, Oakley Park, Barrie North, where there's vandalism and open drug use and things of that nature as well. Just obviously there's a high concentration of children there.
Thank you for the question. So on a case-by-case basis, we can certainly look at the where those resources are deployed. Sarah, can I get you to bring up the enhanced downtown area? Because we do want to capture that the area where we have so many people congregating. We don't, not to suggest that those schools don't fall into that area, but in the traditional downtown core area, they may fall outside of that. But at the end of the day, they're police officers. And so if we have situations in those areas, those officers are certainly able to be directed to that area to address concern. It's slide 3, please. Nope. Yes, it is. That's one there. So you'll note on that it's terrible. Sorry, it's a small map. So it may not capture those areas, but certainly are, if we have concerns, the officers, that's an extra 2 minutes on a bike. Certainly doable for at the end of the day, it's about helping people feel safer. And I think there's a return on investment there is a safe bet.
Additional questions for the chief? I have one. It's not sort of a question. It's more of a comment, chief. And you know that this board has welcomed statistical analysis and safety. Will there be some presentation perhaps in September by yourself and or team to determine the effectiveness of the approaches? That would be something I think we as a board would like to see. Okay, we've done it. What were our observations? What were our results? Is that something you'd be able to provide to us?
Thank you, Board Chair. Most certainly, in the ask of the organization is that should be an expectation, and absolutely we will, because at the end of it is we need to track. We targeted, we're testing this process, and now we want to track results, and not the in addition to the high level, reduction in crime, increased proactivity, increased presence in areas and for times in those areas. What about that qualitative depth? And we're going to be looking for more of that. How do our residents feel? Did they see us more? And perhaps even different measures with respect to social media and its presence and its prevalence and increase. So there's so many levels, but absolutely we will be tracking, and there'll be a robust presentation to provide the board greater insight into the effect of this.
I think, yeah, thank you. I think we'll look forward to that. So, any final questions for the chief? Well, it's a good lead into our adjustment on our agenda then. Chief, with respect to a statistical update, please, sir.
So with that, Chair, thank you. Yes, I will hand it over to our organizational researcher, Madison Sharman, to speak to our triannual statistical update. In addition to forming the board, as an organization, we learned as a result of the information we are collecting and tracking, and change our deployment as a result as the landscape changes in terms of what we know and how much we know and what we can do about it. So with that, I will hand it over to to Madison to speak to our current state.
Welcome.
Good morning. Nice to be back. So today I'm going to present on our triannual update. So that's going to look at the first little bit of the year. So for those who don't know me or the public online, my name is Madison. I work as an organizational researcher here, and I'm part of our unit. So the data we're looking at, as I mentioned, it's in this January to April period. We'll be doing the triannual periods throughout the year. This just helps control with seasonality as well. All the data is updated as of April 30th, 2024, and data comes into our service through our communications unit and our records and information unit as well. So the board is well versed in this. We use various measures to see police activity that includes safety perceptions, proactive police work. So we have our CAD created events. That is mainly volume in terms of indication. Then we have our crime counts. So from our CAD created events, our records management unit then provides codes. Those are considered our crime counts. So that could be crimes against persons, those kinds of pieces. From there, we get our crime harm. So that is severity through the Canadian Crime Severity Index, which is attached to those crime count codes. And then we also look at social disorder, and those are often calls to the police that are non-criminal in nature, but often see an intersection between homelessness, mental health, and addictions. So when it comes to pure volume, those CAD created events, and again, remember, this is just January to April. We are seeing a lower trend compared to last year. So we're going to continue to monitor throughout the summer to see how our calls for service are going. But we are seeing an increase in online reporting. When it comes to our priorities, right now we're sitting at about 26% are considered emergency. Comparison to 2023 as a whole, we are sitting at about 31%. But again, as the chief mentioned, over the summer, we do see a change in composition of our calls. So we're expecting that number and that proportion to rise. When it comes to our most frequent CAT events, we see quite a mixture between social disorder, proactive work, and traffic. That's kind of what makes up our highest composition. This chart has 911 hangups removed. I know last year we did discuss how that is kind of a growing concern across a lot of different police services. So this has 911 hangups removed. However, that trend is still increasing. They're taking up about a quarter of our calls into communications. So what we see here, our highest being police assistance, that is quite broad, but that speaks to some of the volume and types of calls we see downtown, for example. We have traffic stops, motor vehicle collisions, and again, that unwanted person, ambulance assist, suspicious person are really those social disorder indicators. And then alternatively, we see, you know, that traffic stop, community service, proactive indicators. So don't think of that as crime volume, think of that as officer generated proactive work. I do want to note when it comes to our weighted crime harm index, there's been an update. So this is a measure from Stats Canada. It's based on actual sentencing length and incarceration rate. So what happens is every 5 years, those numbers are updated and kind of corrects for societal norms that we see. So we are now working with this new index and have applied it retroactively to all of our data. So every comparison you're going to see is within the same index. So I wanted to point out some interesting changes. So we see murder went from 7,656 days in prison to 8,273 days in prison. So we're seeing slight changes. A new one that we're seeing on the index that was not there before is impeding attempt to save life. So that's a brand new harm score. Fraud, for example, went down from 121 days to 88 days. Something that we've seen quite a significant increase in is impaired operation causing death, which essentially doubled considering days in prison. So that's just to give us kind of an understanding of how things change. There's been a few more dramatic ones, but for the most part, we've seen kind of a few fluctuations. So this is, again, just a visual reminder of why we use a holistic approach to measure safety. So we have here our crime count, again, what most police services use. So looking at a 1-to-1 ratio, treating crime as equal. However, when we use and apply a harm index, we truly see the difference in terms of impacts to community, victim, those pieces. So we look at effect under versus an aggravated assault. And then that is what we then map in order to direct our resources. Again, just as a reminder, we break our crime harm into 3 categories. Our community reported, so think of that as a person victim, things like assault or robbery. We then have proactively detected. This is found through good police work, through traffic stops, also anything where there was a task force dedicated to finding some of these, so such as human trafficking and drugs. And then we have our commercially reported. So when we look at our trends by type, we are down in the sense that our harm score is lower than last year's period. So that's exciting to see. We do see community reported taking up the largest proportion of our calls, but that's because we have the highest volume and they have the largest harm scores because they have person victims. So the severity of community reported events, which focuses on those true victims, is actually at its lowest since 2021. Instead, we've seen the composition change slightly. So we've seen an increase in proactive harm, which, not to be alarmed, doesn't mean there's more drugs and weapons. It means our officers are working more proactively and doing great police work to find these things before they turn into the red category. We then have our commercially reported, so that has doubled, but again, that has the chance to be externally influenced. So that could be more loss prevention in stores. It doesn't necessarily mean there's more shoplifting. It could mean there's more detection. So that is, we can't really fully dive into what that means, but just understanding that that can be influenced. So when we look at our harm versus count, These dotted lines are count, so that 1-to-1 ratio, just a crime count. We see our commercial crimes have increased. We see our community reported harm has slightly increased, but when we look at the raw numbers, it's nothing to be particularly concerned about. And our proactive has stayed the same. So again, the importance of adding an additional metric, what does that mean? Our commercial harm remains low, very low harm scores, very hard to move the needle on that one sometimes. This one is really interesting because we're starting to see a cross. So what this means is, although counts have very slightly increased, the harm levels have significantly decreased, which means a crime is less severe than it has been in the past. So we're seeing the severity per crime reduce, which is really important. So now we know when it comes to counts and volumes, we can focus on that, but knowing that severity has gone down. And this one is really exciting, and I'm looking forward to see it go through the summer. So this one is showing proactive harm increasing slightly while counts are staying the same. So that basically means officers are doing the same volume of police work, but they're finding a lot more in those calls. So we'll go through a couple examples when we talk about proactive work, but them being able to find a lot more items prior to them becoming community reported. So this just kind of combines our conversation of counts and harm together, looking at average severity per offense. Again, excited to report that we're seeing the lowest average harm score per crime event in the last 5 years. So when we look at what are harm drivers, this has stayed consistently the same. It's been the same order and the same offense year over year. So we're seeing fraud, break and enter, assault, sex assault, robbery, and theft. And again, this is with the new index. Proactive, we're seeing those possession of weapons being very high. So for example, this is a news story that we put out as a media release. And again, it highlights that good proactive work, that through those actions, police are able to take that stuff off the street before they turn into community reported harm. And we are seeing proactive harm increase. So they're finding more. And then shoplifting, in terms of community reported, again, this is the harm. It stays the same quite consistently year over year. I do want to make a note on our mapping. So we've moved our mapping to a hexagon system rather than specifically address-based, just to clear up some data issues that can come out of address-based. So I wanted to show an example. This is our headquarters, our campus, just to show the general size of the hexagon, just so you have a picture when we map. So each side, that green arrow is 100 meters. And then diagonal is 200 meters. So for reference, it's 0.26 kilometers squared, but I find this picture a lot more helpful. So when we look at that crime concentration, we're looking specifically at community reported harm, those instances with a person victim. We see extreme concentration as research suggests, and as we have consistently seen in our data. So 14 of those hexagon locations, which can fit depending on the building type, a couple houses within that area or a couple businesses. We've seen 14 of those locations responsible for 20% of our community reported harm. None of those are in any of our harm spots. So when we dug into them a little bit more, it's usually 1 to 2 events that drive that harm, very isolated, very targeted. And we're not seeing consistent harm follow at that address. So that is something we monitor. So ultimately, these 14 locations, I don't want to say anomalies or one-offs, but very, very controlled in the harm that they're experiencing. Our offender population is also extremely concentrated. 9 individuals are responsible for about 20% of community reported harm. So these names are the ones that would go to our high harm unit. And if they aren't incarcerated, those are individuals that high harm unit would monitor. So when we look at our map last year to this year, again, this is only the beginning of the year. So I do want to note summer last year looked quite different. And we'll continue to monitor what summer this year looks like. However, this map also visually shows we're seeing less harm. The towers are not as tall, but we are still seeing a composition change. They're not consistently in the same areas. And again, that's indicative of we are a very safe city. So when it comes to harm metrics, they're very sensitive. We're not seeing consistent high harm across our city. We see those few events that happen throughout that we're very aware of, and we're able to target resources accordingly. Again, when we look at our volume, this is just January to April. I will say last summer, our harm was focused downtown. These first few months of the year, it is not, but our volume is consistently focused downtown. So think about those social disorder calls, those police assistants, unwanted persons, those pieces are consistently focused in our downtown. So those volume. And that speaks to the chief's downtown strategy. When we look at our harm spots, we continue to monitor them to see how they're going. We haven't had to change, add, or drop any locations. They've stayed the same. These areas continue to be below their baseline, which is really important. It's hard to measure harm that didn't happen. So our best measure is showing what it looked like before and consistently monitoring that. I will say the few, I guess our camera's a little bit in the spot. We had one harmful event in a harm spot in January and then again in March. But again, those are one-offs and we continue to monitor those areas. But they are consistently below the baselines from when we started. Additionally, our traffic hotspots are looking really good. We're seeing a reduction in accidents within those patrolled areas. So that's really exciting. And then just what's coming up for our unit, the downtown strategy. I know a stats presentation was requested. Don't worry, the EVP unit will be monitoring those stats to see how they go throughout the summer, including implementation of the project and outcomes. We're also looking towards a auto theft grant we got in partnership with South Simcoe, measuring the proactive activities of those. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Ms. Sharman. Questions? I know Mr. Khan had one. I'll start with you, sir, and questions, please.
Thanks kindly, Chair, and thanks, Ms. Sherman. I do look forward to your triannual report, so it's good to see you back. I want to be very careful how I phrase the question. You study and you've got markers and different data sets and points that you observe and you report on. You advised about some trends, some positive trends in terms of numbers, positive as in negative.
Yeah.
But so that I'm happy with that. What I'm looking for is if you can include in your observations just the tracking of the impact of the mayor's office's proactive efforts to adjust the protocol regarding prisoner release into the city. And if that is in any way, shape, or form being displayed in your reporting, not that particular thing, but if the impact of that is being displayed in your reporting. Thank you.
Board Chair, if I could take that question.
Chief, please.
Excellent question. We are continually challenged, and you asked me of our facility that had the drop off in Barrie was for the list of just the individuals that were dropped off within our community, purely for the purpose of that exact question, to provide a robust response to when we were asked that question, which I think is fair and an expectation of a board of governance, but certainly of a city. We are unable to provide that answer. We were not provided that information. So that challenge remains unfulfilled. And I do apologize for that. Our intent certainly upon should we receive that information would purely be to measure effect. I think that is an expectation.
Or Nuttall, then Mr. Khan, please.
Sorry, I'm 50% here right now. I'm fighting a bit of an allergy attack. I apologize. I stay away from lawnmowers usually. So I don't know how we would ever track that. What I can track is the number of individuals who have chosen not to be dropped in the city of Barrie. And in the first 6 months, that was 260 releasees that decided to go elsewhere. In that same time period, I think we had about 30 up to Barrie. That's a complete inversion from previous stats that were coming out of the release.
Chair, I should have said this earlier. That was a completely unsolicited question by me. I was really just kind of curious because I know that the program is there and I was wondering, how do we measure? How do we understand what's going on? And I appreciate the chief's response and you're back, Bill. Thank you.
Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report today. I appreciate it. I'm interested in the harm score calculation, and I guess this is something that really dawned on me when you said that they just changed the harm scores. And so then I'm kind of thinking about those scores, and like I understand that's the best that we have. That's like what we have to work with, and then it gives us something consistent and where we can monitor and track year over year and look at these things. So I understand that, and I think it's great that we're using those scores. Just coming off the heels of the downtown presentation as an example, like we know that the harm score doesn't necessarily relate to or correspond directly with how safe people feel. Like we know statistically that this is a very safe city, but that doesn't change how one or two individuals may feel based on crime that happens, which may have a very low harm score. So I think car theft is a good example. Like that's been something that's been in the media a lot. We've seen more car theft. It probably, like, I know it doesn't have the same harm score as a murder, but it makes people feel very unsafe in their neighborhoods. So how can we as a service kind of like track those elements and increase, say, the level of safety that people are feeling? Like, and I know like our job is to respond to the crime, but what can we do in terms of capturing this data so that we have a better understanding of that perception along with the surveys that we do and things like that?
That's a great question. And I think we deal a lot with that perception versus reality piece. Both are still very important. If you're not feeling safe, that's your truth. So with that, we just look at alternate responses. So we still track things like that. And then there's additional measures like our community safety survey. However, responses to that may not need to be a sworn officer. It could be our citizens on patrol, our auxiliaries. Our downtown strategy is an example of that with deploying auxiliaries and special constables. So we can monitor those things, but just deploy a different strategy in response. And I think that's also where a lot of our proactive harm spots and pieces come in as well, ideally making people feel safe through visibility.
Deputy Mayor Thompson, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question. You said the increase in online reporting. I've had a few comments from residents that it's a little bit tough. Have we ever reviewed the process of online reporting to simplify it? And I understand that information is needed. And to be honest, I've been fortunate enough, I've never had to report online. But yeah, has there ever been maybe an overlooking it to see if there's a simplification of the process?
Chief, please.
Thank you, Board Chair. Yes, is the short answer. And we're actually this year moving to a new platform, which is, again, the idea being when we look at our systems, at the end of the day, we want intuitive systems that when easy to use, people go online, they can use it and they can fill it out and they understand how to use it. And that was our initial foray into it. And now we're upgrading the system to have a better system, an easier one to use. And again, from our perspective, and having used it on the other side of that and filling it in, uploading photos, and again, there's a level of comfort with technology. But in addition to that, we're also exploring other opportunities. So, that online reporting, there's also, you fill in the forms, that's possible. We're also exploring that opportunity to speak with an officer at the office instead who can assist you walk through that in terms of virtual. But again, it's one of those where we're testing things to see what works best. But we are alive to the fact that we want to make systems very easy to use because then people will use them and that's helpful.
That'll please.
Yeah, my only Finally, I have two comments, if that's okay, based on the report. The first one is the using of the data, and I'm sorry I wasn't here during your presentation on the downtown, but I'm assuming the use of the data that was shown in this presentation is feeding what you're doing downtown as well, year over year, in terms of the month of the year that downtown is obviously affected. The second thing I just wanted to make comment on is I think there's some like all of the above things happening, where the police department has invested more resources last year and even more resources this year into the waterfront and downtown. The second thing that has happened is you've become more visible, not just because the amount of resources, but how you're governing that area, if you will. And then the relationships, I think, that are being built and enhanced between the different stakeholders, the county, the downtown, the different trials that we're trying in terms of paramedic services, et cetera, mental health support workers, is all starting to come out. But the next report, I think, is the one that we are really looking to. That'll tell the story of how successful it's been achieved. And I was wondering if, rather than waiting for the 3 months, if we could have a follow-up report maybe in July that gives us an understanding of what's happened through to at least the end of school. Maybe not a fulsome report, but just showing what's happening down there, because if this trend continues, it's very, very good story. Chief, please.
Thank you for the thank you for the questions and the commentary. So just a reflection of what we're looking at. We can certainly explore that. The cautionary note to any statistical presentation, and we call it year to date. The danger is there are patterns, there are trends, seasonality, but we recognize certainly summer. We know there are some things that we think affect social disorder and criminality. We know weather does, and climate. That's a fair statement to say. So we can certainly present how it is going. And with respect to that downtown initiative, and to a previous question, and it's hard to continue to share that message when there is that perception out there. We live in a safe city, and it is a great city, but at the same time, we do suffer crime like any other population base that's grouped together. But it is the perception of that, and certainly in our downtown, we have social disorder, and it makes people feel unsafe. What we do know, though, that can help address those concerns, and as you've noted, Mary, is our visible presence. Not simply that you can see us more, but we're there longer, and our interaction and our cooperation with different organizations. Absolutely, we can present on that in terms of where we're at. But again, the cautionary note is it fluctuates when you look at a small fragment of time versus over a longer period. The trends don't pop as much or show up as much.
The board has consistently over the last 2 years, I'm not sure you can call that consistently yet, but maybe next year, supported the increase in number of officers on the ground, both through reorganization as well as new funding, right? And you've seen an increase in the number of officer, I think you call it proactive, is that? Yeah, proactive detection of crimes, I guess. I don't know what your verbiage is. Do you think there's a correlation there as well? Like, obviously, doing more, using the data to be in the right places, right times. Is there any correlation with having enough? I know we hate to use boots on the ground to be able to actually do that proactive police work?
Oh, thank you for that question, Mayor. No, appreciating, and I'll be forthright. Yes, this Board of Governance has been very supportive in supporting our personnel and getting this service to the resources it needs. And I would love to say it's causal, but I cannot. I know I cannot. But it speaks to, and I'm not blindly a fan of statistics, but I am very supportive of when we look at our data and trends. That is an exciting trend for me to see proactive increase. That is a lost measure in policing across this country. There's some damn good police work going on, and those are officers doing it out there day and night. And they're choosing to conduct vehicle stops in a manner and in locations and in certain ways and at times and places. And it certainly speaks to their level of job knowledge, but they have to be there to do it. And so certainly, I would argue that it's not free time, it's the proactive time. The expectation of our community is that if you detect the proactive harm, it doesn't become the reactive response. And that's the stuff that damages the community. I know it is, I noted to the deputy informally that it always is concerning when you hear proactive crime, proactive harm appears to be increasing. That's proactively detected before it hurts people and there's victims. Public safety organization, our role is to reduce victimization. That's how people feel unsafe. They feel like they're going to be a victim or they've been a victim. And I think the expectation of the police service is the more proactive policing we see from our front line and our police service, safer our community feels. There's folks, there's guns and drugs out there. We know that. But when our officers are finding those things before we get phone calls at 911 for something terrible happening, that is a sign of a high functioning organization and hardworking women and men out there 24/7. So that is exciting for me. And then when I see the reduction in actual crime harm, community reported harm, that means there's less victims potentially. If everyone was reporting the crime, which no, they don't, but so so the short answer is yes, I believe there is a relationship, but I can't say it's causal.
Mr. Chairman, my final would be, and to those who worked on the agreement between our association and our board, I would also say it indicates an increase in morale as well. When you see folks going the extra mile, working hard through it, I think it is a positive indication of where those who are working on the ground are going and how they're feeling about their jobs and who they're working with.
I would agree. And also as a result of the discussions with the association is the use of special consequences that is allowed, in part for the expansion of the initiative that we just heard from the chief. So that part of the discussion is also very, very positive. I have one quick question on if we could bring up the harm index, the new one versus the old one. Impeding attempted to save a life. That's a brand new one. What does that exactly mean?
So Chair, and again, when you look at the harm index, yeah, it will reflect brand new crimes that have been listed in the criminal code. I'm going to go pull that up. I believe that is. Yeah, that's the correct one. Yes. See.
Is in the middle of the pack and it was a 0 before. What exactly is that public?
I mean, data wise, that would mean we're seeing an increase of people actually being incarcerated for it. Operational wise, I would look to everyone else.
Before Chair, I can get back to you. I
That's-
do believe it is a drug related with someone providing life-saving or failing to provide that life-saving naloxone type. So which would reflect the reality of the change in the legal landscape.
Thank you. That's what I thought it was, Chief. I just wanted some confirmation. Any other questions before we move on? Seeing none, Ms. Sharman, thank you once again for your report. This board continues to support the movement for evidence-based policing, but the data, Mr. Mayor.
Rich, before everyone leaves, I just wanted to say thank you because I've been to a number of the town halls and the work that's done to answer questions from the public and the presentations folks are doing a really, really, really good job. And yes, there's always request for more data and like, you know, what's happening at 123 Main Street and all that stuff. I just wanted to say thank you because it's actually all of the I actually haven't had a single negative piece of feedback throughout the 5 town halls we've done. It's all been very, very, very positive. So thank you for doing that. Good information, and we're getting good responses to it.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Thank you. Echo that. Back to you, Chief, for the update for the board and the community.
Thank you, Board Chair, for the opportunity to highlight a few events and initiatives that have occurred since our last board meeting. Did I kick up there? There we go. In mid-April, the city of Barrie welcomed evacuees from the Kasheshawan First Nation community, offering temporary refuge as they face severe flooding in their area. ISN Maskawa, who is an Indigenous-led community support, invited the Barrie Police Service, along with our partner Simcoe County Paramedics and Barrie Fire and Emergency Services, to join and participate in a heartwarming community barbecue. This event provided us with an opportunity to connect with and support the members of the Kasheshawan First Nation community during this challenging time. It was we were lucky enough for some beautiful weather that day too. I'm excited to share that we are teaming up with the South Simcoe Police Service to address auto theft in the city of Barrie and the towns of Innisfil and Bradford. With funding from the Ontario government's Preventing Auto Thefts grant totaling 1.8 million over 3 years, we're tackling this issue head on. Our teams will distribute 10,000 Faraday bags to prevent key fob signal theft, and we're committed to enforcing the law and holding offenders accountable. This is a prime example of crime knowing no boundaries. And so 2 police services closely aligned working together to effectively address that. May 4th, our service in partnership with the Barrie Public Library hosted the 3rd annual wellness fair at the Barrie Farmers Market. It serves as a vital platform with over 30 agencies in attendance for community members to engage and learn about resources available to support mental health and overall wellness. Thank you to our engagement team, auxiliary members, and Citizens on Patrol volunteers for attending that day and helping to spread the word about the resources and services offered by the Barrie Police Service. Deputy Chief Burke and PC Tyler Plumpton proudly took part in the home runs for the hungry. Their participation, along with the contributions of others, supported the Barrie Food Bank. Each ticket sold supported their mission to ensure no one goes hungry by providing food relief to individuals and families in our community facing food insecurity. This event contributes to building a stronger, more resilient community, and we are dedicated to doing our part, however and wherever we can. Strong legs there, Deputy. It's good work. Our service members attended the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement Awards Gala, where we celebrated our members receiving their 20 and 30 years of service awards. We also joined in celebration with the Treaty 3 Police Service, as we were jointly nominated for an award in the teamwork category. This nomination recognizes significant exchange experience that took place in the fall of 2023, where Barrie police officers gained valuable insight by working alongside Treaty 3 Police Service officers with the Indigenous communities they serve. On May 9th, the Barrie Police Service hosted our yearly awards ceremony. We were privileged to welcome members of our board, local MPPs, Attorney General Doug Downey, and Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Andrea Kanjan, and other distinguished guests, including many proud family members who joined us to celebrate the remarkable contributions of both our officers and community members, honoring their exceptional service and commendable acts, including life-saving, bravery, and formal commendation. It served as an emotional reminder of the profound impact that acts of kindness, bravery, and humanity can have, often in immeasurable ways. Our community safety and well-being team has actively engaged in various community events. PC Kira Brooks organized a bicycle rodeo distributing 100 bicycle lights to enhance Safety for our youth cyclists. It was an enjoyable and educational experience for all involved. Following this, Creating Connection series continued at the Holly Community Library, where they hosted a delightful storytime session. On May 10th, we enthusiastically participated in McHappy Day with a strong turnout at multiple McDonald's locations across the city. Supporting McDonald's Canada with this impactful initiative has consistently made a difference in our community year after year. Some investigative highlights. On May 1st, officers were in the Dunlop Street area searching for a suspect in an investigation. The male was located, placed under arrest for charges including attempted murder, assault, and trafficking stemming from an incident back in March. Once in custody, cocaine and fentanyl were found in his possession. He was ultimately held for a bail hearing. During the investigation, an associate of the wanted male was arrested for obstruction of a peace officer and was found to be in possession of stolen property. I want to thank the Community Safety and Wellbeing High Harm team for their outstanding work in removing a violent offender from our community. Thank you for your dedication and efforts in making our community safer. On May 7th, we received a call for service for break and enter in progress. The homeowner reported hearing unusual noise and breaking glass. Officers arrived within 90 seconds and surrounded the area. After a short foot pursuit, they quickly took the suspect into custody. The male was charged with break and enter, and in addition, failing to comply with a probation order as he was already facing criminal charges. The Barrie Police Service, Barrie Fire and Emergency Services, and Simcoe County Paramedic Services have joined forces to present a Youth Emergency Services Academy. One session is already concluded, leaving just 2 dates remaining. You have a child, this is to our community, aged 11 to 14, interested in experiencing the world of emergency services firsthand. Don't miss this opportunity. The upcoming academy dates are Wednesday, July 24th and Wednesday, August 7th. With that, Board Chair, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks, Chief Johnson, for your update. Questions for the chief, and or I'm adding agenda item 18, community concerns to express to the chief. Strawn, then Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report. And every month we see highlights of the work that's being done and lots of positive things, which I think is great to see. I'm wondering if at a future meeting, we could have a presentation that talks more in depth about some of the ongoing community partnerships that we have and the work that we're doing with partners in the community, because like we highlight kind of these one-off events, but I know that there's a lot more that goes into the background of all of this, and we have some very strong partnerships. So I'd like to learn more about that at a future meeting, if that's fine with the chair and the chief.
Here, you noted that. Any other questions for the chief or team? Once again, Chief Johnson, thank you very much for your update. And I will at this point entertain a motion to move in camera to discuss personal and legal matters in accordance with section 44(1)A of the Community Safety and Policing Act. Mr. Khan? Mayor Thompson? Everybody in favor of that? Thank you. And just to advise both staff and the public, we will be adjourning after our in-camera, so there'll be no further open business. We will adjourn the meeting right after our in-camera session. Thank you, everyone.